Okay, well, let's get right into it. Thank you for coming to this CSS Cafe. Thank you for the invite and the delightful intro. Y'all are so sweet. I couldn't wait to come back. Plus, this is a cool topic, and I want to talk about it as many times as I can because Scroll Snap is super rad. It is very capable of doing a lot of things. It helps you stay out of the uncanny scroll valley. And if you've ever heard of the uncanny valley, it's when something doesn't quite seem right. You can smell it. Maybe not smell it, but you can see it. Like you're watching an animation and they have their teeth are weird and they're talking, and then you're just like, wait, I know this animation is talking, but their mouths are moving wrong. That no human has teeth like that or mouths like that. And so they're in this uncanny valley. They tried to recreate a realistic human in 3D, didn't work. Have you ever tried to recreate scroll with 3D transforms and pointer events? You're going to be in the uncanny valley. So let's stick to scroll as much as we can, and so that we don't find ourselves in that uncanny valley. That means every platform gets the natural way that they scroll, and that's going to feel good for everyone, and it's less work from you. As we get started, though, before we get into Scroll Snap, we have to talk about overflow because, well, you need to know what overflow is and how it works before we get there. Plus, overflow is kind of complex even of itself, and so this is just a little brief overview. So first off, we have clipping. And the way that clipping works is you've got to have elements that are asking for more space than the parent has defined. So it takes two to tango in this scenario. The viewport, this scroll port, as we're going to start to talk about it, that's outlined in purple here, that says, I'm firmly this size, and it stands its ground, right? So this isn't a weak width assignment. This is a strong width assignment, a strong width and height assignment, so that this scroll port is very well defined. And then each child inside of there goes, oh yeah, well, I'm always a square and I'm always a square of this size. And then the browser has to go, well, the children are asking for more space than the parent square that they're in. We got to clip that. That clipping needs to happen. And so you can define that as overflow hidden, and that just does a simple clip scenario. There's also overflow X auto. So you can be like, hey, browser, let people scroll that stuff, right? So these children, we had a lot of children. They asked for more space than the parent could supply. And we said, you know what to do with that, browser? Go ahead and let them scroll that. Also, we have scroll X right to left. So you can do the same thing, overflow X auto, set the direction to right to left, and look at the difference. We get a scroller that starts on the right and goes the other direction. So scrollers need to be aware of content flow, because if the directionality of the document changes, so does where scroll starts. We can also look at vertical scrolling. So we have overflow Y auto. So again, this is a viewport that defined an amount of space and the children are asking for more that's there. Check this out. If we said overflow Y auto and direction right to left, what changes in a vertical scroll bar? The side that the scroll bar is on. That's kind of nifty. So if you've ever wanted the scroll bar on the other side, you can just set the direction right to left and pull off a cool little trick if you want. I don't know. Nested tips inside of here. Okay, so then there's also, we're talking about logical flow of a document in terms of right to left. There is overflow block auto, which is going to be the direction. So it'll be direction aware, like what's the direction of the document. We have scroll inline also, overflow inline auto. I think the support for these is really good these days. When I first made this, there wasn't that great support, but I think you can switch to the logical properties of overflow if you like. So then something that people don't do as often is overflow both X and Y. And look at this, we get a nice little like matrix. So it says, okay, well, given the space that I have, and it looks like this is big on this viewport, it's kind of cool. And then right to left, look at our scroll bars on the other side. And we started at the other side of the area. So just a little overview of scrolling in both directions. And after we've kind of gone over overflow and the requirements of a scroll port and children asking for more space than is available, there's going to be some terms I'm going to keep using throughout the rest of this presentation. And here they are, so that we can all be on the same page as I say these things. First one is the root scroller. The topmost scroller. This is typically the HTML tag, which is also something I don't think most people know, is they always set body to overscroll or overflow, Y auto, and really it's your HTML element that has that on it by default, not your body element. So this root scroller is your topmost scroller, which can change, right? There's this thing called scroller promotion is possible, which we're not really going to talk about today, but just think about this thing as the topmost scroller. It's also kind of like any scroller that's not a nested scroller. And this root scroller is important because it has special features like pull to refresh. If you've ever gone to a website on Chrome and you pull down the website and it has like a Chrome browser refresh icon that refreshes the page, that's something that's supplied by the browser only on the root scroller. You don't get that on nested scrollers or implicit scrollers. So let's talk about implicit scrollers. This is a nested scroller or any scroller that's not the root scroller. Lol. I laugh because I don't like it when you have to define something by what it's not. You're like, just tell me what it is. Well, you're like, well, what it is what it isn't. And you're like, well, that's not that helpful. But really, that is the easiest way to think about it is you only have one root scroller, but you can have many implicit scrollers. And that's the deal. Even if you promote a scroller, and I know we're not going to talk, even if you do that, you still only ever have one root scroller. And these root scrollers get, anyway, a couple of special superpowers. So we're mostly going to be working with implicit scrollers today. Just because that we're making a bunch of demos. So there's also the scroll port, which we've talked about a little bit already. I've mentioned it a couple times. It's got the purple border. So you'll see that purple border on all of the following demos. To identify the scroll port, you can firmly see the frame at which something is inside of. Then we have scroll axis, which is kind of what we talked about with like overflow X and overflow Y. These are a 2D coordinate system to translate along. We have scroll behavior. You're going to hear me talk about that, which is from CSS or JavaScript control if browser scroll should be instant or animated. So when you click a target link or like a header that sets the hashtag into the page, you can define with scroll behavior whether or not that goes smoothly to there, like transitioning over time, or if it instantly jumps there. Scroll behavior is your way to control that. And we'll find ways in our demos here to leverage these features for certain use cases, and it's going to be really fun. Scroll behavior, not to be confused with, actually it's really easy to confuse with overscroll behavior. So we had scroll behavior, now we have overscroll. Overscroll meaning what happens when you're at the edge and you continue to try to scroll. And this is where you can say, should a nested scroller trap its inertia or not? This is the way I like to think about it, because if you've got overscroll behavior set to contain, as you try to continue scrolling somewhere, it won't leak out. And I'll show a demo of this later, but just know the difference between scroll behavior and overscroll behavior. And then we have overscroll effect. So this is the UI feedback that a scroller will give to someone to let them know they're at the edge. So this can be something like on iOS, you get the little like rubber band feel. It goes boing, kind of bounces back. Android used to have that little gradient that would come out from the side, like a glow. Anyway, any sort of, like you can also use a shadow for like an overscroll effect. Actually, a shadow is better for a scroll hint, but like an overscroll effect is what sort of feedback are you giving to your users that they're at the end of a scroll area. And right now on Chrome in nested scrollers, there is no overscroll effect. It just kind of stops. And I'm working to fix that. So that's overscroll effect. Then we have last here is scroll hint. And a scroll hint is you trying to give information to the user that this area is scrollable. So sometimes you see that as like a shadow on the bottom or the right that says like, you can go this direction. This layer is behind this one and it moves. And so you try to indicate that with a shadow. What you're doing is providing a UI to help users see that there's room to scroll. That's a hint. You're providing the scent to the user that there's a feature available here. And you can do that in many sorts of ways. It could be an arrow, arrow pointing to the right that says you can go this way. Hey, look, like this one. Look, a scroll hint. It's right there. Okay, so that's it for the kind of ramp up and the glossary. Oh, it looks like it remembered my last position. I was doing some testing earlier. Okay, so let's do scroll snap, the basics. And also, did you notice that we're in scroll snap? This presentation is made with scroll snap. Look at that. I'm snapping between slides. I'm going up and down. I've made anyway, we'll talk about it later, but just know it's kind of fun. I have snaps inside of snaps inside of snaps. And at one point, we're going to get about 5 levels deep of scroll snapping. And the browser's just like, doesn't care. The browser's like, I don't know the difference between 5 deep or 1 deep. I'm just going to make it scrollable and snappable. Anyway, okay. Scroll snap basics. The syntax for the scroll port is scroll snap type X proximity. So you have this opportunity to say which axis and whether or not it's strict about snapping or not. Proximity means if you're close to it, snap to it. If someone is far away from a snap point, don't force them into one. Whereas scroll snap here sets Y as the axis, but mandatory. And mandatory is like, this user scrolled this area. They must be on a snap point at all times. It is impossible for the user to find themselves at a point where they are not snapped at a snap point. Mandatory. There's use cases for both. It's funny, in my little example here, I have Y set to mandatory. That's usually something I don't do. Like if you're trying to set vertical scroll on your page, it can feel like scroll hijacking if you set mandatory on vertical scroll. So this is just like a small nested tip. Try to only do mandatory on horizontal scrollers, unless you have a really good reason to do it vertically. Like Apple does it vertically when they're scrolly telling, because they want you to land perfectly in their little viewport. And anyway, so there's ways to get around it, but just know that like mandatory on scroll Y can lead to issues. Okay, so that's for the scroll port. The scroll port says which axis and how strict should the snapping be. And then for each scroll item, so you have to put this on the item itself. You can't put this on the parent. Each item says where it wants to snap. And you can snap to start, center, or end. So this is using the logical sides of the scroll port. Okay, so we have scroll ports and we have scroll items. Let's dig in. Oh yeah, also, by the way, there's DevTools in Chrome for this, and I'll show them to you, but you can find them in the Elements panel and look for the scroll snap badge. In fact, let's just do it right now, because why not? It's a scroll snap layout. Let's look at it. So look, here's scroll snap. Let me zoom in. Boopity boop, boopity boop. Hit escape to close out the console there. All right, so here we are looking at my slides. We've got a scroll snap layout here. This one is inside of this scroll snap. I can click this here. You see the purple outline? That's the scroll port, just like I have in my demos. And then here this little dot shows where this particular element is wanting to snap. It wants to snap in the center. And we'll look at some more demos of this, but just know that the Elements panel right next to grid overlay and container overlays, you have a scroll snap dev tool set up, and it will, well, we'll check it out. It can show you lots of cool stuff. Thumbs up if you could see DevTools and everything was cool and readable. Rad. All right, cool. Thanks, y'all. Okay, so our first example, the pretty much classic example people do a scroll snap. And hey, why are my edges all weird here? Oh, because I'm partially scrolled in. Okay, this is the typical horizontal example. We say snap X, scroll snap type X mandatory. We're making a carousel type thing. Find every nested direct descendant and set it to align to center. And boom, we get this. Here, let's even visualize it. Scroll snap. Boom, 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 boom. Oh, Chrome, wake up. There we go. Okay, so see how we have items. Each item is looking to snap in the center. We have our scroll port, and as we scroll, we can see that the end of our inertia that we pushed with, I'm using a mouse wheel here, it will find the item that's going to snap and put it into the center of the scroll port. So kind of cool. That's really good basic horizontal scroll usage. So let's look at some basic vertical usage. So we have scroll snap type, Y proximity this time. So proximity means it's not forced to align things to the center, but as long as they're pretty close, it's going to do it. And in this particular use case, everything in the scroller is set to align. So it's very likely everything is going to snap. So proximity is pretty close to mandatory in this particular example, but we'll get into scenarios where it's not. And again, we set every single scroll child to try to align to center. So we would see each of these with squares with centers, the dots in the center, trying to find the state there. Okay, but we looked at snapping on both sides before, right? Well, that scroll snap handles that, because you just say scroll snap type both mandatory. So in this case, a horizontal and a vertical snap point must be found. And look, I can snap myself right into the middle of like a cool matrix grid. And it looks pretty sweet. And definitely check out the DevTools for this. This looks super cool. So I'm going to scroll up here. I'm kind of hoping to lose my voice by the end of this. We'll see. Let's go here. Get scroll snap on this. Yes, because look at this cool grid that we get to see. How sweet is that? I hope you all can see the purple. This is like my favorite part of the whole presentation, is just seeing this like matrix. Look at this little port here. I feel like it's so magical. Like it's all colorful here, and then I get to see the ghost of all the other items, and then they pop in and they snap, and it just is so satisfying. Anyway, okay, cool. So that's scroll snap DevTools, scroll snap matrix, right? So we're telling each particular child to align to the center along both axes, X and Y, and the browser does all the work like it's not a big deal. So now let's talk about scroll snap stop. This is a way for you to articulate that an item is a firm destination. So we have like firm snapping with X mandatory or Y mandatory, but scroll snap stop says the user cannot scroll past this item. This is an important landmark that it's like crucial that the destination ends here on their scroll. So here I have scroll snap stop always on every single child. That means like in a carousel scenario, no matter how hard I scroll, well, it looks like sometimes I can do it, but I'm flicking fairly strongly here. And you can see that like I have a lot of initial inertia and it goes, eh, I'm stopping on every single item. Now, if I long drag like this, I can continually pass it. So it's not impossible to pass, but it does have this, yeah, I mentioned it's a landmark that you're saying is really important. And scroll snap stop is good here. We'll see other use cases where this is really important. Like maybe you're having someone scroll up to the top of the page. They're scrolling really fast and you want it to stop before you get to the header element, like stop at the top of the article. You could have that article have a scroll snap point and say scroll snap stop always. And the scroll would stop there until they scroll again. And then they go past your header up to the top nav or something like that. So it's got some really cool use cases beyond just carousels. And we'll get into some of those use cases later. And again, we show this because overflow always works and snapping always works with the theory of two axes. So a lot of time people build scroll snap stuff with only one axis in mind. This always, so the spec and the implementation always works with two. So of course you can do matrix stops. So you can make it stop on every single one of these as you go. And you get this kind of perfect one by one workflow as you work through the different scroll snap points. Kind of cool. Okay. Those were some basics. So now we're going to go into scroll snap advanced, which is even actually the cool part. The cool part's the next section. This is a cool section too. I don't know why I'm downplaying this part, but anyway, let's get into some non-standard things that you can do with scroll snap that a lot of people just, I don't know, they just didn't try yet. So here we have snap X, we have scroll snap type X mandatory. So remember, mandatory means it must be snapped to an item, and we only have one snap child. Only one. The fifth item, it says I'm scroll snap aligned center. And that would be this item here. Look, it's the browser is going to render this, acknowledge that it's mandatory to snap to something. It's going to see that the only snap item is number 5, which is in the middle, and hence the scroller begins in the center. And look, as I try to scroll over, I can't because I've made it mandatory to be on a snap point, and there's only one snap point. So a lot of times people put snap points on every single child, but this shows you that you can put it on just one. And this demo might look ridiculous, like I've just made it impossible to go to other sides, but we're going to use this for a really cool effect later. So just tuck in your tool belt though that each child can specify a different position for itself to snap to, and it's not required that each item is snappable. You can limit the amount of snappable children. And I think that's a fundamental advanced breakthrough for people with scroll snap. Here's another one. So far, we've always been targeting the direct child. I've got a scroll port and boxes, and the boxes are snapping. Yeah, but what if I want to snap to things inside of those boxes or things inside of those things, boxes? I just confused myself, but I think you know what I mean. You know, like we got trees with leaves and we're going down a few leaves. Okay. So here we've got snap X, scroll snap X mandatory, some nested child. And in this case, it's these emoji. And in this case, I'm going to turn on the DevTools so we can see. Look at this. We have snapping only on these. So they say, hey, I'm a nested child. I want to snap a line in the center. So the boxes are no longer the snap targets. These particular emoji pairs are. And as I scroll, look, this one went into the center. I'll do a little scroll. That one went into the center. I'll do a scroll again. That one went in the center. There's no reason you're stuck to direct descendant snapping or snapping of big items or little items. You can make any child of a scroll snap container a snap destination. And anyway, I was getting really worked up there. No one was challenging that. Anyway, it's just like people just don't do that. So it's nice to know that you don't have to snap on direct descendants. You don't have to snap on every child. You have a lot of options, and that's what starts to unlock a lot of the really cool techniques we'll get into in a second. Okay, so then let's talk about trapping scroll. I mentioned this earlier, over scroll behavior contained. So here's this one contained. Look at me, I'm scrolling in here. You can't see, well here. Look, I'm trying to scroll here. I'm scrolling down now. I'm scrolling up now. Hey, that's kind of fun. You all get to like see that. Anyway, so I'm trying to, and it's contained. So let me go over to this one. I'll go down and I'll go down again. Ooh, it leaked out, right? If I go up here, oh no, now I'm trapped on this one. If I go up here, I'll scroll up to the top, but if I scroll again, it leaks out. I don't want that leakage. I want it to stay trapped. And so I set over scroll behavior to contain. When it hits the edges, contain it. I find I put this on almost every single nested scroller that I make. it becomes a really valuable way to not let a scroll event leak out. Like modals are like this. You'll have a modal load up and then you scroll to accept the terms or whatever. And then you hit the bottom and then all of a sudden the background page starts scrolling down more. And you're like, oh, someone should have trapped that scroll with overscroll behavior contain. Okay, let's talk about scroll padding. This one is scroll padding and scroll margin are often confused. And I'm hoping that by the time you're done with this talk, it'll be very clear to you. So this first part is scroll port padding. So notice it's scroll port padding, whereas down here, we're gonna have scroll margin is scroll item margin. Scroll padding is exclusively for scroll ports. Scroll margin is exclusively for scroll items. And we'll actually look at this in a second too. Okay, so let's consider this scenario here where we have like some padding on the scroll port, and then we've added the same amount of padding to the scroll padding. So here's our example here. Look at, we have a mandatory snap thing, and this snap item wants to snap to the start, so it's going to snap to the top here, and well, that's giving us this kind of awkward amount of snapping. Well, over here we have scroll padding set, and that gives us an offset from the edge, so every single one of these that snap away from the edge based on the amount of padding that we have. And if we set the padding equal to the amount of padding on the thing, we have a nice harmonious appearance. So that's scroll padding around the viewport. You can achieve the same effect if you give every single item scroll margin, the same thing, but with scroll item margin or just scroll margin here, you have the opportunity per item to say how far away from the scroll port edge this particular item should be. So let's go back up here and look at scroll padding. So we turn on the scroll snap tools and look, we see padding around it just like normal, right? So the DevTools will actually visualize this for you. So as you scroll here, and here, let's visualize this one that doesn't have it. Yeah, two at the same time. Look at that. That's so cool. Anyway, that's a visual of what scroll padding is doing for you. Man, that's good stuff. That's a good demo. Okay. Oh, look, I got some like issues here in alignment. Who cares? Okay, that's what happens when you use fluid typography. So then we have scroll snap here. Look at all the margins on each particular item. We'll stick it on this one too, so that you can see that there is no particular amount of offset from the edge here. And so this is per item offset from the edge of which it's trying to snap from. It's just cool stuff. And we'll find out ways to kind of leverage this as well. Let's grab here, turn off scroll snap, close this up so my typography lines up again. That's so much better. Okay, another advanced thing about scroll snap that a lot of people don't know about is element.scroll into view. So you just target a DOM node, or if you have a DOM node reference in JavaScript, you say scroll into view, behavior smooth. We talked about scroll behavior before. This is how JavaScript can specify whether it should interpolate there over time or go instant. And you can specify which axis that you want to snap along. So I'm saying scroll into view. It's going to pick an element and scroll it into view. And that's going to work with the scroll snap points. So I'm scrolling this item that is, so we have a mandatory scroll port. This scroll item says, I snap to center. I told this item to scroll into view, and the browser's like, okay, this is a mandatory scroll into view, snap it into the center scenario. And you just get this really well orchestrated JavaScript driven interaction. So these things play together really nicely. It's really cool. And here is a fun kicker. This particular kicker is in Firefox now. It wasn't when I first started giving this presentation, but snap after layout is this concept of before snap after layout. If you had an iPad and you'd gone a couple slides in on my presentation, for example, and you rotated the iPad, the browser starts scroll back at the beginning. It completely loses the current snap point. And that's because layout changed. And it doesn't do this. It doesn't snap after layout. It doesn't reevaluate who to snap to after layout's changed. But snap after layout was an addition to the scroll snap spec that makes it so like, look, I've got this item is snapped in the center, and watch me cause layout change. Layout is changing and the snap position is persisted. That means I could now rotate my iPad and I still have the same slide selected. I could rotate it back and it's still maintaining my snap position. And it turns out we can abuse this or leverage it, whichever word you want to say, to do some really cool advanced tricks. So just know that snap after layout is a clutch aspect of scroll snap that is not only good for users, it's good for you as a developer. Also included in scroll snap is this, so you want to know about when things are coming in and out of the scroll port, so you can use an intersection observer. You've got a callback that's going to be called back with the nodes that are particularly in view. And so you can filter based on these. Each of these nodes are going to have properties about how much they're in view and stuff like that. You can create a new intersection observer like this, pass it your callback and some options. And in this case, you tell it which scroll port to watch. It's going to be referenced as root here. And then you observe items. So you're going to go through each of the scroll items and set this IO that you got back, tell it to observe each of these items. So as this particular item comes into this particular scroll port, call this callback with information about how much it's intersecting, etc. And we're going to find really cool ways to use that also, like this. So we've got this one here. This is my callback. It's going to go through each of the nodes. It's going to set their in-view class based on whether they're intersecting with the scroll port or not. So let me scroll just so we can see this a little bit. Did you see our squares are turning into circles as they come into the scroll port? So if this element is intersecting the viewport at all, see how this one is partially in, this yellow one? It's intersecting. It is currently inside of the scroll port at least a little bit, so it gets the class in view. So this is a really simple way to know whether or not an element is in view. This does not tell you if it is snapped or not, but this, again, it does tell you if something is just intersecting with your scroll port at all. And I find it is pretty handy. And the callback here looks kind of nice. There's a whole bunch of these demos, by the way, and I'm going to end up opening this up. I'm just going to open this up in a tab because we're going to look at it in a second. But visit this Snap Gallery. This Snap Gallery is a CodePen collection of all the demos that we're about to go through. All of the code is clearly indicated in there for you to take. Please go take the snap tricks in there. And then go preview them and try them. Try them on a mobile device, try them on a Linux machine, try them on a Windows machine. Feel out how the scrolling is different and it's natural in each of those different environments. It's really nice. So visit that Snap Gallery. That's one thing to definitely take away today is this is all the free stuff. It's just like, oh, Adam did all the hard work and figured out all these cool use cases. I'll just go take it. I'm like, yeah, do it. Go take it. So a little review before we go into the tricks parts. That was the Scroll Snap Advanced section. We talked about the scroll port, and the scroll port is responsible for overflow axis, scroll snap type, gaps, padding, and scroll padding, and overscroll behavior. So these are all aspects of a scroll port that you should be mindful of when creating one. We also have a scroll item. So each item inside of that scroll port is responsible for its snap alignment, whether or not it's a snap stop point, and its own margins and its scroll margins. So just kind of good stuff to know. And onto the scroll snap tricks and hacks. This is the juicy best part of the whole thing, and let's dig in. Okay. I mean, we know carousels are pretty easy to make with scroll snap points, but let's start with a slide starter kit, right? Because you can kind of make slides really easy. So we've got a scroll port with Y mandatory. We set the scroll item size to pretty much be the size of the viewport. We tell it to align to the top here, and we tell it to stop on each one because we want users to be forced into look at, I can try to whip past these and you can, oh, look, that one I got, I must have dragged my finger a long time. But yeah, you get this really nice guided flow through slides with just a few lines of code. That's pretty much it. And you'll find again, so this particular slide starter kit, all these demos are in that CodePen collection. It'll be called Slide Starter Kit. You can go grab all the stuff, but this is the meat of the solution is this particular part here. So with like one little tweak, we can also take that same slide starter and make a sticky starter by saying each item position sticky top 0. Look at this. Piece of cake. The natural order of the elements creates the stacking order that we want, and as they come in, they stick to the top, and the new one's not stuck yet until it gets here, and now it's stuck, so it remains. What a cool effect for a free little couple lines of CSS. Gotta love it. And we can go even further. So if you notice in this particular slides here, do you see how the words 3D perspective are moving at a little bit of a different rate than some of the other stuff? Look at how Sticky Starter came in a little later than and then whooshed in, and it goes out a little fast. I have 3D perspective set on my scroll port, and the way that you can do that is like this. So you set a scroll port perspective, you can set a depth here. This is about like the range of your depth. This is the perspective. I set my origin to center, so things kind of look like they're going up, off, and down at the bottom. So it has this centered perspective feel. And then in order to get all of this stuff to continue working, you have to set transform style preserve 3D so that your children and the scroll port are sort of isolated in the 3D space. And then you take the little items that you want, like in this case, this paragraph, and you set a translate Z. And look, I can actually push it back in 3D space and see the result of that. So each of these have a different depth, and you can see how they have a different effect on the way that they come in. And look, there was 3 of them all together, and they have like a staggered look because they are literally like different depths in space. And so the staggered look is natural. Look how they squeeze together as I go to the top as their depths and perspective are affected pretty cool. I think the perspective features of scrolling and snapping are really cool. You also see a lot of people make really rad demos on CodePen with that, where there's like, it feels like parallax. You're basically doing a parallax type effect for free with no JavaScript, and it's very natural, which is very cool. So anyway, that's 3D perspective. If you like these slides that I'm working with, I have a starter kit for you. So this is like it's just CSS. You can load the JavaScript if you want to know which slide is the currently snapped one and stuff like that. But if you want just the CSS, you'll get this like concept of 2 different matrices of slides. So anyway, it just gets it to you for free. So if you liked how these slides felt, how it could go left to right and had individual columns, you can go take that here. I called it slide. You can just steal it. Okay, here's another trick. So this trick is called tap to snap, which is not only just fun to say, it's kind of cool. And it also works best in Firefox. Firefox does something cool that the other ones don't do. Hey, maybe I should bring it up and preview it. Maybe we'll get there, we'll see. So tap to snap says, all right, so we have a scroll port that's scrolling horizontally, right? I can scroll it horizontally. Scroll snap type is X mandatory, but look at this. Notice how as I'm scrolling, none of the items are snapping. This is a free scroll. But down here, I say scroll item is active or focused, snap align it to center. Oh, so if I click purple, it goes to the center. If I click salmon, if I click orange, click yellow, I can tap to snap. So the item and this is clutch because of mandatory. Mandatory says if any child is currently asking to be snap aligned, it's mandatory that it is snapped. And so as I click, it is forced into a snap position. What Firefox does that's cool here is you can set scroll behavior to smooth and it will smoothly go to each item. It's a really nice touch. I've logged a bucket against Chrome so that Chrome can do the same thing. But yeah, clicking to have it smoothly come in is a very cool feature. And plus with the keyboard interaction, it means that like you've got like, anyway, it's just a very cool effect. So tap to snap. So you can basically like on demand set something to snap. Cool use case. Auto forward by somebody here. Ooh, this is a really cool effect, a very tricky effect where you're kind of playing the browser as a fool, which is kind of fun, but you're getting an automated, animated scroll snap slide scenario. And the way that it works is you sort of take on and take off snap assignment. So like we were just talking about how tap to snap adds something that's snapped on demand. Well, this is orchestrating snap in and off of an element so that the browser is like, you're going to remove snap in order to translate something somewhere new and then restore snap. And so the browser's like, oh, snap's gone. Oh, but this is translated up. Oh, snap is back. And it's like, now I'm in a new slide. And it has no idea what you did. It's very tricky. You can go find the demo on that CodePen collection and go research it. It also is cool that it's in CSS because you can do things like hover on it and pause the animations and stuff like that. But yeah, very cool effect by Christian there. You can also simulate a sort of infinite scroll. So we were looking at like scroll behavior snap. You know, like it doesn't usually feel that desirable to not smoothly animate scroll position to a new target. But if you're doing something like infinite scroll, it actually can be clutch in that we're going to scroll something into view and not specify behavior smooth, which is like we can scroll to this thing and it just feels like it never ends. And the way that that works is I'm watching it with an intersection observer to see if the current item that's in view is the last item. So if this item is the last item, then why don't we just go ahead and scroll that first item into view instantly? And since the last item and the first item are the same, we get imperceivable infinite scrolling. And so that's why once we hit this, ends this just actually snapped us back to the beginning. But since the browser is so awesome, we don't even see a flash. And now I'm back into a scenario where I can scroll this thing forever. It's not perfect though. It has some uncanniness, but it's just an interesting concept that you can leverage that instant scroll snap to sort of dupe your users and sleight of hand them and be like, oh, you think it was infinite, but it was not. Kind of a cool little trick. Okay, this one is called SMART. Oh, am I going to remember the acronym? Style, measure, and recalculate. Style, measure, and who cares? It was a bad acronym to begin with. I mean, it's cool. It says SMART, but it's very forced to be that. Anyway, okay. So what we're doing here, though, is I want to know which item is snapped, which is currently impossible. It's literally in every single browser. It is impossible to know the item that is snapped. You can try to derive it through a lot of different ways, like intersection observer. Intersection observer is a good one to know. If you only have if your snap items are full size of the scroll port, then you only have one at a time. And so if it's intersecting, more than 90%, you can feel very confident that you know that that item snapped. But in this case, I have 3.5 items, and I want to know which item is snapped. I can't just assume or try to measure its intersection with the center here. So me and the Chrome engineers came up with this fun hack that relies on snap after layout. And what it does is when scroll ends, we increase the gap up to 100 VW, which pushes everything else out of view, leaving only the item that is in view snapped because it's in the center. Snap after layout forces a layout to keep that item snapped. And so we can go look. So we give this huge gap, and now only the snapped item is left. We go look to see who's left, and then we remove the gap and put it back. And it all does that so fast that I can assign a class and know which item is snapped. And what's interesting too is this uncovers some secrets about scroll snapping. Like if I scroll to the end here, this item snapped, even though I asked for the items to be snapped in the center, but look, nothing is snapped in the center. The browser has decided this item is snapped. I actually can't ever snap this item. Kind of interesting, unless I do some additional work to make it so that there's like padding on these sides. If I scroll back to the beginning, I also can't, oh, look at that. And that's kind of bullshit if you ask me. I just scroll back to the beginning and I expected the first item to be snapped, but I was just like, yeah, I guess the second one's close enough to the center. Well, I'll just snap that one. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. So this is the current best way to know which item is snapped, is this abusive process here where you blow it up, look, and shrink it back. I wouldn't deploy this to production. I'm working on a spec and features that would make this very easy to know. But it is interesting to note, though, that the snapped item is not always going to be a predictable thing. The browser can do weird stuff, which we just saw right here. Okay, let's look at a cool trick where we're going to have an overscroll effect. So we talked about overscroll effects earlier, how like you only get them really on the root scroller. At least in Chrome, you get the bouncy effect where you can pull and it kind of stretches, or you pull and it gets the little spinner. iOS and Firefox, by the way, have overscroll effects everywhere. So if you have a nested scroller and you hit the end, it'll bounce and go back and bounce and go back. I wanted it in Chrome. I figured out a way to do it with scroll snap. So look, that's exactly what we want, isn't it? I'll go to the end. I get very natural feeling snapping. And the way that it works is every item in here is a scroll snap target, except these like invisible ones that I have at the beginning here, which I guess we could go look at here. Let's open up DevTools. Let's find our scroll snap point. So here's the overscroller element. And as I pull it over, we can see that that element is another square there basically, and that it's not a snap target. And this is a forced mandatory scroll snap area. So we'll only snap to snap items, even though I have things. So remember we looked at that demo where it was like, this is dumb that you can't actually scroll to those other items. You snapped one child. What is it? How is this ever going to be useful? It's useful right here. It's useful right here because we have items flanking all of the snap items that's creating extra space that gives us that ability to feel the overscroll effect at the edges. It's pretty cool. I don't know. I like it. And that you can deploy pretty much everywhere today to get that effect everywhere that you want a snappable feeling scroll. Scroll start. Okay, so here is a feature that is, I think it's really common in UI that's not easy to do, but here's a trick to do it. And this is setting the scroll start position on load. So usually right now we have to have JavaScript to do this. You'll load the page. JavaScript says, okay, window on load, go target this little scroll area and set the, scroll into view this element or whatever. And that way your carousel starts in the center, for example. Or another good example is you load up Spotify and you go to a playlist, you scroll down and you're like, where's the search bar? And you scroll back up and you realize that the search bar was actually above the scroll start position they started you at. So it's almost like they disguised it. The page loaded and you were actually scrolled down 50 pixels. Scroll start is this feature where you want on load to set a default start position that's not the beginning. So again, we can abuse or leverage the fact that we have one or none scroll snap points in the particular scroller. So we have like the scrolling start target here, or we just have like a scrollable scroll port. We set the animation to scroll start. Look, it's a 2 millisecond animation. And on load, it says, find this item. Oh, look, this is the snap target. So you put this particular animation on a child that you want to be the starting scroll position. And then when it loads, it says, okay, I'm the starting scroll position, and the browser goes, I'm a mandatory scroll snap area. I see I have a snap point. I'll put that item in the scroll position to start. And then as soon as it's done with that work, you remove it. You remove the snap point, so that way you get back into a free scroll scenario. So you use the fact that a mandatory scroll snap point will be rendered on load, and then you remove it so that the scroll position can be just or the scroll experience can be regular after that. So it's kind of cool. You can just like we had tap to snap, and we have we animated scroll snap earlier, we're animating scroll snap again on and off to leverage these features that the browser is going to do for us. So kind of cool. Also, you can do pull to refresh. Hey, what's this doing all looking funky? Oh, probably because I'm resizing the browser over and over again. Oh, this demo is totally not broken. I'm going to refresh the page and hit Command L. Whatever. I guess I'll scroll to it. Go over here. We're in the tricks. Go down here. I can actually use the keyboard too. That's another cool thing about scroll snap points. You get the keyboard interaction for free. Because it's a scroll area, you get scrolling, and then by snapping, every key press will find the next snap child and snap to it. Okay, smart, over scroll effect, scroll start, we're almost there. Pull to refresh, gasp, it's broken. Bullshit, dang it. That is really frustrating. If I resize my browser, is it better? Oh crap, we went over here. Chat UI, we'll get there. Oh, date and time, oh, come on. Scroll linked, yeah, oh. That's almost better. I wonder if I just have some like styles that are off. I don't know. Anyway, you can see that like the goal here was we set a scroll start position at this particular element right here, so that on the load it starts this content, but we actually have a huge div above it. Whoa, I hit a keyboard button and it totally, it focused that particular demo down there. JavaScript, stealing stuff. Anyway, there's an element up here that we can scroll up towards that has a snap point at the very top, so that it only snaps if you go all the way to it. You can do like a partial pull and not cause the pull to refresh. And then I have scrolling animations that rotate things and bring in the thing, that bring in the sort of loader. And so you can kind of orchestrate all this stuff. So we're kind of combining all of these different advanced tricks together to pull off very natural feeling pull to refresh, for example. I'm going to figure out what's up with that demo after this. And here's another one. Let's see if this one works. Okay, so this is following my scroll position. That's nice. All right, so I don't know what's wrong with the first one, but so this one's using scroll linked animations as well. We have a scroll snap point up here, scroll snap points on these contents items down here, and we're watching the scroll of this to change the underscore and position of it here. The syntax has definitely changed. It's changed a lot of times. So, but scroll linked animations is becoming a more firm spec, and it's changing less and less every day. But anyway, it's a really exciting thing to use with scroll snap points. Scrolling animations and scroll snap points feel like this match made in heaven, because a scroll snap point is a lot like a keyframe. It's like you indicating a destination, and you can animate between those snap points just like you animate between keyframes. It's really cool stuff. So then you can also make a demo like this. So here I have 3 different scroll snap point areas. They're all representing different things, and you can let the user essentially like pick a date and time. Each of these is contained, so that if I get to the top, look, I don't scroll myself out of it, stays contained. And then I've also used a gradient mask to sort of give it this effect that they're sort of rotating into distance or something like that. But here's the way I did it: was display grid, overflow, Y auto, overscroll behavior, Y contain, and scroll snap type, Y mandatory, because I want each of these to be forced into a snap position. And it creates a really nice experience. It almost looks like the little dial that you got on iPhone 1 or whatever back in the day. Here's another fun example. So again, if we go back to thinking about snap after layout, if you add an item to a scroller, layout has occurred. So what we can do here is we can look at the last chat bubble and make it the only snap alignment. And this allows us to do something like this. Hey there. It's staying scrolled properly. And then over here, the bot can say like, you sure? I guess it is. I'm giving a presentation and typing live in front of people. It's nerve-wracking, but it seems to be going okay. Anyway, what is nice to observe here is normally you would have to have JavaScript or something waiting for, you append it and then you set the scroll position again, and it's going to be this janky experience, but you can give it all to the browser to do by just saying this last chat bubble should be snapped to the end of the scroll area, add some scroll padding there so that the end of the scroll area is actually away from your particular input type, and you've got yourself an auto bottom staying scrolling scroll area because you leveraged scroll snap points. Pretty cool. Here's another fun demo. So we have a scroll port with overflow X auto, and that's going to let me go through all my friends like this horizontally. We say scroll snap type X mandatory so that you have to land on a friend. You can't find yourself in between friends. And then each friend is going to have another set of scroll snap points. Oh, I guess each friend is just snap to start and snap stop always so that you can't bypass all your friends. Like, if I flick hard, it's like kind of going there. Go back, and go back to the beginning. And then I've also wired this one up so that if you click on the right-hand side of an image, oh, look, it just kind of like hiccuped there. Scroll into view seems to be doing some sticky behavior because it should be sticking. Anyway, you can tap through cross-faded items, and then you can move on to your next friend. So you could just keep tapping on the right, just like you do inside of Instagram or whatever, and move through layers inside of a scroll snap point. I'm sure the demo will work better if you visit it in that collection. And then at the end of these nice tips and tricks, I have this swipe UI. So if we think about, here's like a draggable area, right? So I'm using scroll here. Normally you would use gestures and transforms and stuff like that, but you can make it so that this particular item is the one that's snapped and that you can't snap unless you pull it all the way to the edge, at which point, like I can't even do it right now on this humongous monitor, but then it could snap at the end. You could wait for scroll to end, see if they've pulled themselves to delete or archive, and then perform an animation on here. So you can kind of build drag gestures, or like gesture UIs can be scroll snap powered, because essentially what you're asking things to do is be on a single axis, right? You just want to drag left and right. And you do want to have things kind of snap back if they weren't completed, and you want this threshold. And so you can go articulate all of that particular information into a scroll snap experience just like this and make a whole list. And then if you wanted, you can make it scroll linked animations so that these icons appear as they come into view, and really cool stuff like that. And then this one also needs scroll start because you need to start in the middle. Just like how we have a carousel that wants to scroll start in the middle so that you can see both directions. Same thing here. We need scroll start to be able to do that. Okay. That was a lot of demos, a lot of scroll snapping experiences that we went through. I want to talk about what's next for Scroll Snap. Christian mentioned that I'm part of the CSS working group. I'm working on Scroll Snap 2, which is going to be these next level enhancements. And let me tell you about what they are so you know what to kind of expect. You can find my explainers here at github.com, Argyle/scroll snap explainers. You can also find all of my, this entire presentation is here. Boom. And you can find all these links inside of there. So the scroll snap explainers, we'll go over those on GitHub, but I will introduce you to them right now. And here's a link to the draft. It's drafts.cssworkinggroup.org/CSS scroll snap 2. So in case you want to find it. Okay, the most important one to me is what item is snapped, right? We don't want to have to do that gap trick. That was ridiculous. We want to have something that's dependable. And we want to have something that can tell me which axis the item is snapped on, because if we saw like in our matrix example where there was 2 different parts to snap on, you theoretically could have 2 different snapped items. So we need to know which one is snapped. And that's why we have snapped X here versus just snapped. Just snapped, well, anyway, they're explained in the explainer, but this one is really nice if you've only got a single direction scroller and you just want to know which item is generically snapped. And this one is if you want to know specifically on which axis it's snapped. So the demo here shows that the snapped item is outlined in hot pink. Here it is snapped. Scroll snap 2 would make it this easy, just colon snapped, right? Why isn't it like that today? I have no idea. So I'm working to make it so that it is that easy. We should know which item is snapped and it shouldn't be so hard. So that is feature number 1. That is outlined in Scroll Snap 2, and that one seems pretty straightforward. No one is pushing back on that one at all. Seems good to go. This next one, Scroll Start. This is also another one where the browsers are like, oh, that doesn't seem so hard. We're totally interested in this feature. And this is where you could say, so you target an element, and you say scroll start target inline auto. So what this is saying to these scroll ports, so if this item is in a scroll port, the scroll port is going to look to see if any children are articulated as the scroll start target, which axis it is that they want to be the starting position of, and they set it to auto, and then the browser goes, oh, I have an item that wants to start as the scroll start position, and this thing could be like, well, I'm also snapped in the center, and then could snap it right here into the center. So you get this really nice experience about targeting an element to tell it where to scroll start. And this other alternative here is giving dimensions like a length. So you say scroll X and Y. So this would scroll start at 5 rem from the top, or you could just say scroll start Y, 5 rem. So you have this option of saying specifically how far, or target an element and make sure that scrolling starts there. That's scroll start. 2 new JavaScript events need to be added to scroll snap, in my opinion. The first one here is called snap changing. And if you watch really closely here, the dots at the top of this demo is right as the browser is seeing this particular, or not the browser, just this demo. As soon as it passes the thresholds that a new item is going to be the snap target, the dots change. And that's really good real-time feedback for users to see that if their gesture, if they let go, where are they going to end up? And that plays in really nice with snap changed, which is after a snap has occurred and is completed. Watch as I reach mentions here and I stop. When I let go, snap has changed, and then I get an event to fire and I can go lazy load some content or stuff like that. So 2 different ones there. Snap changing, which is as soon as the browser has identified it's going to find a new target, and snap changed as soon as it is rested at a new target. This last one here is the one that's the most wiggly of all of them, and it's sort of giving you the carousel type of features where you can just say, hey, scroll port, snap to the next item and do it smoothly, or snap to the previous item, right? So you should have these like keywords inside of scrolling that let you do the same thing as a carousel does. So that way you don't have to specifically manage the current index and know which item is snapped and all that kind of crap. You're just basically like, browser, go to the next item, go to the previous item. You're giving up state management to the browser instead of you trying to duplicate it and synchronize it. Seems pretty cool. The reason this one's a little wiggly is there was like 2 different APIs proposed, and this one here is adding new options to scroll to. So that's why we have left and snap previous, these new keywords and this new axis. So you can say which axis and how you want it to do. You can also do like snap end, snap start. So it would go to the very end, very start, go to next, previous. Pretty much where I'm trying to mimic a lot of the carousel interfaces that you have for managing those experiences. And that is it. Holy snap, that was a lot about scroll. I hope a lot of that sunk in really well. You can review the slides here. I just pasted them in the comments, and whew, thanks for listening to that chat about snap. Hopefully you learned something. Appreciate it.